Yo, what's good everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top starts of the week for week 9 of the 2023 fantasy football season. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get right into it. At quarterback, we're going to start with Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. He is taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. They have been a generous matchup for passing games all season. Dak Prescott has been hot lately. The quarterback 1 in week 6 and the quarterback 3 in week 8, according to Fantasy Pros scoring. And then if you take a look at the recent games against the Eagles that Dak has played, he's thrown 3, 5, and 3 touchdowns in his last 3 matchups against this team. So I really like Dak Prescott in general. Plus, you have a lot of injuries going on across the NFL. The quarterback situation it's a little murky around the league. So Dak Prescott is someone who at the beginning of the year, maybe you didn't want to start as much. He's turning things up. He's heating up, and I love this matchup. So fire him up as a quarterback 1, unless you have one of those top-end auto-start type of guys. Next up, we're going to go with Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints, and he started the year pretty poorly, but the last few weeks, he's been quietly all right. Quarterback 13, 9, 10, and 15 the last 4 weeks. Not a week-winning type of player. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he does have his best game of the year against the Chicago Bears. And even if he doesn't, I think he's a safe bet to have a solid game, maybe like a low-end quarterback 1. And that's what I'm playing him as against this team at home against Chicago. A low quarterback 1 who should have a safe floor. And if he can finally connect on some passes with Chris Olave, get some deep shots with Shaheed, I think he might have a little bit of upside in this game just because it's such a great matchup. But especially in a 2-quarterback league, if you're dealing with injuries or bye weeks, like I have Justin Fields, and Derek Carr has I had Fields and Mahomes. Carr was my 3rd quarterback, and Carr has actually been filling in pretty all right. So I like him as a low quarterback 1 in week 9 against the Bears. We're going to move on to the running back position, where I'm going to go with the Colts backfield in general. This is just a great matchup against the Carolina Panthers. We have Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss making up that backfield tandem. Obviously, with Jonathan Taylor missing the first, 4 games of the season with that whole contract situation, Zach Moss was amazing. And even since Jonathan Taylor has come back, he has been really usable for fantasy. Both players are seeing solid volume. Last week against the Saints, Jonathan Taylor, it kind of looked like he was taking over the backfield. And then in the second half, it was a little bit more Zach Moss. I'm not sure. There was some speculation that maybe there was an injury going on with Jonathan Taylor. Who really knows what's going on? So monitor the news to see what's going on with that situation. But at the end of the day, this is a great matchup, and I think both backs will be involved. I would obviously play Jonathan Taylor over Zach Moss unless something comes out that he is dealing with an injury. And even so, I would want to know, like, what's the situation with the injury. If he's hurt, if he's just banged up and he's still going to get a full workload, or I guess split the workload pretty evenly with Zach Moss, then I'm still going to fire up Jonathan Taylor with full confidence. It's a great matchup, like I said. I think both players can succeed on the ground. And if Jonathan Taylor gets rolling, this might be the last week that I can really talk about Jonathan Taylor in a start of the week video. It's sort of like Alvin Kamara, like, he was coming back. He wasn't really on people's radars, but since then, Kamara is pretty much an auto start. So Jonathan Taylor, this might be the last week I can really bring him up without being made fun of for being too obvious of a call in a start of the week video. But I love the Colts backfield in week 9 in a great matchup against the Panthers. Next up, I'm going to go with Rachaad White, running back of the Tampa Bay Bucks. It seems like this Houston Texans run defense isn't the incredibly amazing matchup that it was in years past. They've had their moments. They've been kind of up and down. It's been kind of hard to know how to gauge them. But I still think Rachaad White can find success against the Houston Texans. And even if he can't do it on the ground, he's going to do it through the air. He has had 34 and 39 rushing yards the last 2 weeks. And that has turned into the running back 16 and 11 just because 6 and 7 targets, 65 and 70 yards through the air. I think he's a safe play. It's sort of like a running back 2. If he gets in the end zone, he'll probably be a running back 1. So Rachaad White is not someone I am looking to bench this week. He's been pretty solid for fantasy lately, and I expect that to continue in week 9 against the Houston Texans. Next up, I'm going with Kareem Hunt, running back of the Cleveland Browns. He's been great lately. I picked him up in the offseason in Dynasty, and I was just holding on to him. Then he signs with the Browns, and he's actually starting for me. I have McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, a bunch of good players on my team, but with bye weeks and injuries and such, I am starting Kareem Hunt and Darrell Henderson this week at my running back spots with Jonathan Taylor in the flex. So Kareem Hunt, he's been solid for fantasy. He's seeing 12, 10, and 14 carries on the ground, 3, 0, and 1 targets through the air. So solid volume. Not a must-start player, but someone where, with injuries and bye weeks and stuff, he's coming in clutch lately, and he's been the running back 10, 11, and 16 in half PPR the last few weeks with 14.6, 15.1, and 13.2 points. He has gotten in the end zone each of the last 3 weeks with 1, 2, and 1 touchdowns. And you don't want to rely on touchdowns too much, but in week 9 against the Arizona Cardinals, I think he's a very good bet for one of those, what you call touchdowns. And I'm hoping his efficiency goes up a little bit. This is a great matchup. I'm hoping he can get above 4 yards a carry in this game at least. And yeah, it just comes down to the matchup, the availability, the scarcity of running backs at that position. So I like him as a nice low running back 2 flex type of play in week 9 against the Arizona Cardinals in a great matchup. And I'm going to go with Rhamondre Stevenson, running back of the New England Patriots, as another start of the week. This is a tough call, but I just wanted to highlight him here. I do think the Patriots can succeed on offense in this matchup against the Commanders. I thought about making Mac Jones the start of the week, but with them losing Kendrick Bourne, I know Douglas he might be their number 1 go-to weapon right now, but the receiving options in New England are a little suspect right now. But I have the most confidence in Rhamondre Stevenson this week on this team. It's definitely been a very disappointing season. I drafted him in both of my redraft leagues. In one league it was like a 2nd to 3rd round turn. And it just hasn't gone well. I went like him and Jalen Waddle. And Stevenson has been a disappointment. I drafted him in our auction league as well, and he just has not met his draft capital. I do think, though, in week 9 against Washington, I would roll with him unless you have, better options. I like him as a sort of like mid running back 2 type of option. Washington really doesn't have much to do with the matchup as much as it does Washington getting rid of their defensive line, essentially. They got rid of Sweat and Chase Young. We'll see how that defense reacts. I think he's a safe bet to put up a solid game at least, maybe like close to around 10 fantasy points. But without Kendrick Bourne, maybe he'll see a little bit more involvement in the passing game. He's already seen 6, 6, and 4 targets the last few weeks. So not someone that I'm like screaming from the rooftops that, oh my goodness, you have to play this guy. But coming off of a 6-point performance at half PPR, I don't want people to overreact and automatically bench him. At least consider starting him because I do think there is opportunity there. I think New England can score a little bit in this game, especially with Washington trading away those key defensive players. And I just expect Stevenson to have a solid game here. So nice little running back 2 play in week 9 against Washington. And then finally at the running back position, I'm going with Chuba Hubbard, running back of the Carolina Panthers. Miles Sanders is back from injury, fellow running back for the Panthers. He came back last week against Houston. Only saw 2 carries. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up just as he gets healthier. But Chuba, for the most part, has been the better player in the backfield between him and Miles Sanders. Last week against the Houston Texans, I kind of just highlighted both of them in this video. I told you guys to monitor the news as to what was kind of going on with who was going to be more involved. As far as I know, they didn't really say that Miles Sanders was only going to get 2 carries. But either way, Miles Sanders was a bust, had no yards. Chuba Hubbard had 15 carries, only turned into 28 yards. 2 targets turned into 2 for 26. Pretty disappointing for fantasy. So in week 9, I am still going to make him a start of the week, Chuba Hubbard that is, just because it's another good matchup against the Colts. This is not someone that is a must start, but I am flexing him in a league just with bye weeks and injuries and such. And the Colts, they've been giving up points to running backs lately. So not like one of those players where I'm screaming from the rooftops, you must play Chuba Hubbard. But I do think I like him as a low running back 2 type of play. And hopefully he can get things going in this matchup against the Colts. All right, we're moving on to the wide receiver position where I think I am introducing my first trio as a start of the week in my channel's history. I'm pretty sure you can fact check that if you want, but we're going to go with the Saints wide receivers to pair along with Derek Carr, my quarterback start of the week. We're going to go with Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Rashid Shaheed. So Olave is the high draft capital guy, the superstar, been very disappointing for fantasy. Michael Thomas, the veteran, at one point one of the best receivers in the league, just been very consistently good, but not great for fantasy all season. And then we have Rashid Shaheed, who has been a little inconsistent, but he has had the highest ceiling so far this year, hitting on big plays, probably kind of taking away from Chris Olave a little bit. So to start things off, All three of these players are probably not going to do well. They are taking on the Chicago Bears, so we'll see if maybe all three can be usable for fantasy. But I do think, at most, probably two of these are going to end up being good plays. I think Michael Thomas is the safest bet to give you that 40 to 60 yard outcome, as he has done literally every single game this season. Should see 4 to 7 catches, just like he has pretty much every game. Especially in PPR, he's just a nice safe play, especially if you're a favorite in your matchup. Throw him out there, and if he happens to get in the end zone or something, then you'll be even happier. But just like a PPR guy. And I just want to highlight Chris Olave, because I've seen him on some benches in some leagues that I've been in at least one of my leagues. And he's seen 10, 15, and 9 targets the last few weeks, and they're just not connecting. Him and Carr just have not been connecting on deep shots. It's turned into 13.1, 9.2, and 7.1 points the last few weeks. 8.2 the week before that. Just, he's seeing targets. He's seeing air yards. It's just not turning into much. I'm just saying, look at the numbers behind the scenes. There is opportunity there for him to bounce back. This is not an example of a player being bad or losing it. They're just not connecting. And in week 9 against the Bears, it would not surprise me at all if this is the week where Olave and Derek Carr get on the same page and we see vintage Chris Olave doing what he does. So Olave is the guy that I'd be the most excited to play out of all of these three that I'm talking about. Michael Thomas. So I like Olave as a low wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 with upside. Michael Thomas, kind of like a wide receiver 3 flex type of play. Someone that I'm not forcing into my lineup, but if I need a safe play, or if I got bye weeks or injuries and such, you can do a lot worse than Michael Thomas. And then Rashid, Shaheed, I'm only throwing him out there if I'm an underdog, or if I have some drastic injuries going on, because he has a high ceiling. He has performances of 16.5, 17.3, and 22.8. But if he doesn't hit the big play, he's going to be pretty disappointing for fantasy. So sort of a dart throw for a big play. We'll see what happens, but these are all guys that need to be on your radar for week 9 against the Chicago Bears. Next up at wide receiver, I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, but I'm going to go with T. Higgins, wide receiver of the Bengals. I just want to highlight him because he has been extremely disappointing with the Bengals struggling on offense. He's been dealing with his own injury. He's still not 100%, but in week 9, he is taking on the Buffalo Bills, and this matchup has potential to be one of those back and forth explosive games. T. Higgins he is too good of a player and too explosive to put him on the bench automatically. If you have an insane team, there is a world where maybe you do bench T. Higgins, but this is for the people out there who don't have that good of a team and they're still putting T. Higgins on the bench. I got a guy in my league who his team isn't that good, and I feel like he keeps benching T. Higgins, and it's worked out so far, but he was also on the bench in week 2 when he was a wide receiver 3 overall in the week. So I'm just saying, he's got big upside. He's continuing to get better from this injury, and this matchup has high scoring potential. I just would hate for someone out there to start a Michael Thomas over T. Higgins. Michael Thomas is the safer play, but if you bench T. Higgins, you're risking him putting up 25 points on your bench. He had 25 points in week 2 and half PPR. So their offense is looking better. So step 1 is complete. The Bengals are back. We just need T. Higgins, to be healthy, make those big plays that we've always seen him do. So in this matchup against the Buffalo Bills in week 9, I would not be benching him unless I have insane other options. And even last week against the 49ers, he saw 6 targets. It turned into 5 for 69. That's not a terrible week by any stretch of the imagination. Even good wide receivers will have games like that where they're not putting up 101, 100 yards and 1 touchdown. So I would play T. Higgins this week just because of that upside that he has, especially in this matchup. I like him as a wide receiver 2 with a ton of upside if this game becomes a high-scoring back and forth. I could definitely see happening in week 9. And then finally, I'm going with Amari Cooper, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. It's been an odd year for Amari Cooper, mostly because of the quarterback situation with Deshaun Watson kind of being hurt and cleared to play and then not playing. So it's been PJ Walker lately. All year, he's been up and down. 5, 12.5, 21, 2.1, 12.8, 3.2, 11.9. Those are his finishes in half PPR. So it's pretty much an up and down performance. So I guess, in theory, I probably should not recommend starting him because if these trends continue, it should be a bad game. But even though he's been producing with PJ Walker, the team will be getting Deshaun Watson back, it looks like, in week 9. So that gives me a little more confidence in the passing game. And above all, they are taking on the Arizona Cardinals. That is a matchup that Amari Cooper should be able to eat in. So when you factor in the return of Deshaun Watson and the matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, I do think he will break the trend and have at least 2 good games in a row here. So I like Amari Cooper as a wide receiver 2 in week 9 against the Arizona Cardinals. We're moving on to tight end, where I'm going with Taysom Hill, tight end of the New Orleans Saints. I have pretty much highlighted every player for the Saints other than Alvin Kamara, who I also would start, obviously. If I had to flex one player on the Saints, it would be, Alvin Kamara, but he's too obvious of a call to talk about. But Taysom Hill, I think he has a chance to succeed in this game. He's been the tight end 9, 5, and 1 the last few weeks. I made him a start of the week last week, and he was a tight end 1 with 22 points. Week 6 and 7, he had been getting it done through the air. Week 8, he got it done on the ground. 9 for 63 on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, you don't expect that every week, but if he's being used on the ground, you love that. I do think that this is a matchup that he can exploit against the Chicago Bears. And week 6 and 7, he was kind of getting his passing game production with Juwan Johnson dealing with injury. Week 8, Juwan Johnson is on the field. We see the passing game involvement go down, or I should say the receiving game involvement go down. But he still got it done on the ground. So he's just one of those players who he has these stretches where he finds a way to get it done. And when he's in that zone and he has that mojo going and the team is getting him involved, unless you have a top tight end option, more like a Hawkinson, Kelsey, Andrews, Laporta, Kincaid type of guy, Taysom Hill is someone where it's like, you know what? I can try to get, a lucky touchdown out of a streamer, hope someone else that I play gets like 4 for 40. Or I can go with Taysom Hill, where if he doesn't have a good game, he'll probably just have a few points. But if he goes off, he can be the tight end 9, 5, and 1 on the week in half PPR. So he has upside. He's in one of his zones where he's scoring a lot. So I know I am putting a lot of eggs in the Saints basket, and they're not all going to produce as week-winning players for fantasy. But these are all guys that you need to consider, especially when you consider the scarcity of the tight end position. Taysom Hill is a kind of low to mid tight end 1 with upside, just like we saw last week when he was a tight end 1 overall. I know I just said Sam Laporta is someone that you would probably start every week over a guy like Taysom Hill, but he's on bye. But I also brought up Kincaid, who is not on bye. Fellow rookies. Kincaid has been great the last few weeks. The tight end 7 each of the last 2 weeks with 11.5 and 15 points in half PPR. 8 and 7 targets each of the last 2 weeks turned into 8 for 75 and 5 for 65 and a touchdown. This is correlated with the Dawson Knox injury. The rookie tight end is here. He is seeing his opportunities increase, and he's making the most of them. And I expect that to continue in week 9 against the Bengals. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him to succeed here, especially if it's a higher scoring aerial assault. At the tight end position, you can, if you were able to pick up Kincaid off the waiver wire, you should be very happy. I put in bids for him, and I was not able to get him. But he is a higher end tight end 1 this week in week 9 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Not someone I'm playing over like a Hawkinson, Andrews, or Kelsey type of guy. But after that, you can make a case that he's the next best tight end to play. So fire him up with full confidence in week 9. And then next up, I'm going to go with Logan Thomas, tight end of the Washington Commanders. He's had his moments this year where he's been usable for fantasy. I think this is another spot where he might be involved in the underneath passing game. The last 2 weeks, he's seen 6 and 8 targets turned into 4 for 51 and 6 for 44 and a touchdown. 7.1 and 13.4 points in half PPR. The tight end 13 and 8. Not someone that I'm not thrilled to play him, but if you're looking for a streaming option, he's a nice low tight end 1 in week 9 on the road against the New England Patriots. Howell's going to have to get rid of the ball quickly, and Logan Thomas should be there to catch some of those dump offs. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. And good luck in week 9 to everybody except my opponents.